Okay, good. So, here. Good, ready?
Is there any kind of mic in this room?
Yes, there is.
Is he using it or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Fine. So, we have today a very special guest. So this is, I hope this is going to become one of some other kind of talk. So it's not really a research talk, but it's really to see what we're doing. How does this relate to the local market reality? So I met Cariel maybe about a month ago.
Yes.
At an event at the research park, and was very interesting, where we tried to connect the academic side with the industry, and especially at the incubator level. And so Cariel brings expertise in cryptography. In fact, he did his studies in the same as you, but then he decided to do the jump to the industry and discovered many interesting things, and that's what we want to share with you. So to show you that what are the applications of what we do in the real world.
Beautiful.
So thank you very much, Cariel.
Thank you, Francesco. And thank you, everyone, for the opportunity to be here. It's a real honor. A little bit about me. I was born in Caracas, Venezuela, South America, where I started my college degree in business, really, and finance. And but really, my passion since I was a kid, I was a programmer. So I spent countless hours programming, and I wanted to go for engineering. And so I ended up doing my studies in engineering, and that's how I ended up in this field. At the beginning, I became very passionate about cryptology, so it's a real honor to be amongst you guys, because I know you really are passionate about it. And so I started working on public key infrastructure, algorithms, and authentication protocols. I filed for a few patents, and that was a very interesting part of my career. Eventually, obviously, you know, like many of you may experience, we end up in business jobs, and that's what happened. So I ended up creating solutions and architecting solutions for bigger businesses like Sony Pictures and many other businesses out there. The point here being, and where I wanted to go with this first talk, it's about securing cloud applications. How many of you have had some experience with the cloud, let's say Amazon Web Services, Azure, GCP? You guys use it often, have some experience? Yes? Okay, good. So the idea is to go over a little bit what that looks like from the practical sense, and what are we doing at our company to disrupt that world, and to use the latest technologies to make it better. Just a quick overview. Why do businesses choose cloud hosting, right? Before traditional, instead of traditional hosting. As you know, a traditional hosting scenario, you put up some servers, machines, like what we have here in Iraq, and then you're depending on that machines to be working, right? But now when you think about going onto the cloud, you're adding scalability, you're adding cost effectiveness, because now you're sharing that space. You know, when some machines are not in use, somebody else is using it, etc. And the most interesting thing here is availability and flexibility. Why? Because now you don't depend on one location. You can leverage multiple locations to do what you do. And that's the beauty of the cloud services architecture. So in the cloud services architecture, we talk about, let me just minimize the screen here. Yeah. So in the cloud services, it's still in there. Oh, okay, this is what I want to get rid of. Okay, good. So in the cloud services architecture, we talk about having regions and availability zones, and this whole thing, like we think about the cloud as just like, okay, you upload files, you upload applications onto the cloud, but how does that really work up there? There's really locations, hosting locations like anywhere else. It's the same thing. There's a data center that has a bunch of servers in there. It's just the underlying platform, what's called the control plane on those hosting locations that gives us what the amazing part of cloud services. So now when you're talking about a region, like this whole thing being a region, like let's say you go and you say US East 1, you're loading all your application on US East 1. What's in there? There's a bunch of data centers based on availability zones. Now, if we talk a little bit about security here, if you guys ever go and upload, let's say a database and it tells you, okay, I'm going to be on this availability zone, AZ1, AZA, AZB, AZC, your availability zone is tagged differently than for me and then for someone else because they want to keep anonymous those availability zones so that nobody can really match them to someone else. Oh, I'm in the same availability zone. The region is the same, but these are separate data centers in the same area. Now, in addition to this, in terms of what the cloud services architecture is, there's what's called an edge locations. And edge locations are high-speed data transfer locations that are used to make certain services available at better speeds to users. So sometimes when you're going to upload a website and run from a particular service like CloudFront directly from there, now you are distributing that site onto edge locations so that it can be distributed faster to users at different locations in the world. And those are global, by the way. So the reason why I'm doing this quick overview is for people that are not that familiar with the cloud. I understand some here are, but I think it's good to get a quick refresher on how that works. So then we talk a little bit about the virtual private clouds. And here we start talking a little bit more about the security scope of applications. When you go on the cloud and you launch a server, you can just launch it and open it directly to the internet, literally. You can put an IP address, an external IP address on it, and that server is wide open to the internet. And you would be surprised as security practitioners, but business people do that. They just go in there and launch a server. They just want to get their business going and they put it out to the internet. All ports open, doesn't matter what, you know? And so, but there are mechanisms that should be used, like virtual private clouds. What's a virtual private cloud? It's a little network within your cloud account that is within this region that isolates your data transfers to a specific network. It's like if we set up a switch. Are you guys familiar with network devices, switches, these kind of things? So a switch, yeah, but you are?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Switches.
So yeah, so a switch, it's like a network device, right? Like a little network device where you plug in your computers and traffic is really limited to that switch unless you open it outside to the internet. That's where you connect the router and the router connects out to the internet. And then on that router, you can set up firewalling rules. What kind of data can come in? What kind of data can go out, right? And so that's where it gets really interesting. So these virtual private clouds really made the cloud much more feasible for business, especially when we're talking about businesses that have a higher level of liability. And then what are these other things like elastic compute clouds, simple storage services, database services, load balancing, etc. There are hundreds of services on these clouds, both on the Amazon side, Azure, GCP. It's unbelievable how much stuff you can do, including a lot of machine learning nowadays, which is very, very impressive. Now, if we start thinking like all that's very cool, okay, services on the cloud, it's just hosting, you know, like there's no rocket science there. But what happens when we put our stuff on the cloud? There's a shared responsibility model. It's not like, oh, it's secure because it's on Amazon. Oh, it's secure because it's on Google's cloud or Azure. No, there's a shared responsibility model. So what does that mean? Amazon and all the other clouds are responsible for giving you a service that operates, that it's reliable, that offers you the storage that you need, the networking that you need, and that they are in charge of the hardware, right? They have power redundancy, they have multiple data centers, as we saw, etc. But you're responsible for your applications. Businesses are responsible for their applications. Whatever they put in there, it better be secure by itself. It doesn't mean that Amazon is responsible for what you put. If you put a server up there and you put it straight up with an IP address, open to the internet, with SSH port open, and anybody can start hacking it, then that's your problem. And you have customer data in there, that's your problem. And so this is very relevant. It sounds like, I know all of this sounds very basic and very common sense, but this is the part that you guys are going to experience, in my opinion, if you pursue a career in cybersecurity, that you're going to experience when you go out there, that cybersecurity is not common sense for most people. They just want to do business. Business people just want to sell their products, want to sell their ideas. Their ideas are amazing, and that's all they want to do. But we, as security practitioners, are responsible for bringing the light onto them. Hey guys, great that you want to do business, but these are the best practices. You need to make sure that you take care of the cybersecurity scope of things. Now, there are real consequences to all of this, okay? I was at Sony Pictures a few years back when we got hacked, like seriously hacked. So I came in one regular morning to work, coming into the hallways, and there's a commotion, people running all around. I get to my desk and I have a skull in my 2 monitors, right? So the hackers were able to go into the network, put in a virus on the primary domain controller. That's like a Microsoft server that distributes, certain rules onto all computers. So they put the virus in there. It got distributed to all computers. All computers were down. All computers. And not only that, all servers were down. We had to bring down systems that were worth millions of dollars. They never came back up. Now, so you guys say, okay, whatever. Sony Pictures has a lot of money, right? And they can recover from that or whatever. But really, what you see later on, what happens, and the responsibility on our side is what happens to people. So many people got fired after that. I saw people crying in the hallways. Families that had to struggle after this. And that's where cybersecurity becomes a responsibility. It's more than just having fun coding and doing computer stuff. Like, we're really responsible for people's privacy, for sometimes their livelihood. So in this case, because the systems were not secure, a bunch of people lost their jobs, lost their livelihood. It was a mess. For reals, guys. For weeks, we had to walk thousands of computers to inventory them one by one because the hackers got in so bad that they destroyed the inventory of computers. So we didn't even know what we had in terms of computers. We had to go one by one, take them to a white room, clean them up, start everything again. It was a real nightmare. So the point here, there's a shared responsibility model, even in the cloud. Even when you are in a big organization, there's a responsibility on what's running there, what ports are open, who's monitoring what, how is cybersecurity being implemented. And so I'm very passionate about that. This is just a little bit of an extension of that, but you can see, okay, there's customer data, your platform applications. There's all sorts of levels. Like, people think, oh, the operating system is not my responsibility. That it's on an Amazon instance, like on an Amazon server. No, that Amazon server is yours. You're running it. Whatever is running on that instance, if it's vulnerable, the operating system is vulnerable, it's your responsibility to patch it and to use the right tools to make sure that your servers are properly patched. And then anything that's client-side data, server-side encryption, networking, traffic protection, it's a lot, guys. And, it really here just looks like, oh yeah, no, you should be taking care of that. But when you talk about businesses, which are always in a rush to make money, all of this stuff becomes a nightmare for them, a real nightmare. So how are we tracking so far? Any questions, any thoughts? please, I'm, like, honestly, like, feel free to stop me at any time if you have any thoughts. I wanna show you a little bit what we do at Securely. How did we think about solving this problem in a practical way, right? And tell you a little bit more about what's our typical customer and what are their problems, right? And this is important because I want you guys to get. I mean, I remember myself being in college and like, I don't know what you guys, like, what's your background, but my background was like, okay, I want to be independent. I want to have a way to, to make money with what I like doing, which is computer programming. So, like, that was all of what I had in mind, but I didn't know what was expecting me out there. What was going on really in businesses, in the world, in the real job market, and how that was going to play out for my professional life. So from that perspective, like, just to show you a few of our customers, like, let's say these guys, Mendel.ai, they created an AI-based system. Or this is not sharing. Let's see why that's not sharing.
I think you need to share the screen.
Yeah, there. That should work. Okay, so like these guys, Mendel.ai, right? They are taking clinical data, they are aggregating that data using machine learning, creating some statistics, and now sharing it between the hospitals, right? You can imagine how critical is the information that they have and why they would need to secure it, right? That's just, like one scenario. But let's just look at, let's say, these guys, Seneca.dx. So these guys created a platform for COVID testing when the whole COVID thing happened. And so they create all these tests that big organizations can use to run testing for all their employees, get the testing back, process it, make sure that everybody was on the up and up, etc. And so obviously they process through a lot of personal information, personal health information as well. And so very critical for them to keep their system secure. Now, you would be surprised, like a lot of these businesses, because they have such a fast pace to get to market, they are not secure all the time. And I'll tell you, I've had conversations with CIOs and CTOs at big corporations, American Airlines, you name it. And you would be surprised on how surprised they are on the security issues that are present in their environment. And it's not their fault. It's just technology is like that. It goes too fast for businesses. It's normal. So, and we need to make cybersecurity more cost effective for them, right? And so that's where, like for us at Securely, we work with businesses that are relatively small, 10 to 200 employees, maybe funded $1 million to $100 million, depending on their size. And they have this challenge even more present than these big corporations. And so for that reason, we had to create something that was cost effective and that would bring all the functionality that these big corporations need. So we thought about, okay, like what we're not going to create a scanner, like a security scanner. That doesn't make sense. There's plenty of security scanners out there. Why would we create one that wouldn't make sense for us? Creating a security scanner, by the way, I was part of the team that created one, and I know how involved that is. It's crazy. You're talking about like every possible security vulnerability. You need to now scan it, you need to test it, you need to make sure that you are up to date with changes on that particular vulnerability. It's great, but it's the job of someone else, not someone that wants to help businesses grow and have a better security posture. So what we did is we took all the best possible scanners that we found out there, and we created a platform that can run those scanners, okay? And run them in a secure way. So that now we can analyze your system in a secure way, from a unique perspective, and then give you the best possible recommendations for the different vulnerabilities that are going to be in each of those different environments. So you would say, okay, so how, how would you know? How would you know what do I need to address first, right? And so there are certain principles of in cybersecurity, like securing your perimeter, right? So if we would think about this room, you would say, okay, well, we have walls over here, there's a door over there. Is there a lock on that door? Is there like a key card kind of security? Is that glass, someone can break through the glass and come in? What are all those vulnerabilities and how are we securing the perimeter? And so this is what those tests do. And what we did is we created a database of how to address those vulnerabilities in a prioritized way. So we know identity and access management, right, which is that perimeter, it would be your highest priority. If you have vulnerabilities there, why secure anything that's in here if the outside is not secure? Why secure these desks that nobody's going to steal them if the door is going to be open all the time, right? So that's how we created that first. But then eventually now, as you guys have seen, OpenAI was released, right? And so with OpenAI, now we can further that more and we can tell, okay, this is everything that came back out of this scan. What do you think, OpenAI, are the top priorities and why? And what's the severity of those issues? And now we consume that data after we run a scan and we make decisions based on what OpenAI is giving us. So right away, now you're implementing that. And also in the past, for example, we used to go and have to now create a recommendation on how to fix the issue, right? And that would be a manual recommendation. A security practitioner would go in and say, hey, this is how you fix it. These are the steps. Go onto this screen in Amazon Web Services, click here, click there, and then secure it and then test it. So, but now also using OpenAI, we can get those instructions, show it to the user, and then now you're talking always about accelerating the pace of the user getting to a resolution so that they can move on to business tasks, right? So, so showing a little bit about this, we look at how we can aggregate all those different scans and results. We do weekly testing, and then we aggregate the remediations. And then, again, classifying those issues is important. Like, what are the issues that came out from those scanners, and how do we fix them? So these are, for example, issues that were generated automatically by the scanner. And then if we go into one of these, we can see that we can load a remediation path for them. Let me see if I can load this here. So here we go and we say, how do I fix it? And this is literally going out to OpenAI right now and sending a summary on what the issue is and coming back with a step-by-step recommendation on how to address the issue. So this was our take on how to make these businesses more productive on the cybersecurity side, faster, easier for them, right? Again, you're not talking American Airlines, you're not talking, Lending Tree, etc. You're talking smaller businesses that need to move, and that's what we created for them. And so after all of this scanning occurs, which again, if they want to dive deep into everything that I showed you before, the shared responsibility model, you can go here into quite a number of different scans and results and analyze them in a very fast way, and then decide that you want to remediate or fix any of these particular issues. But then at the end of this whole thing, there's the thought for every business of liability, right? Whatever data you're using and you're processing, may end up causing a problem for someone else. So how do you protect people? How do you protect the interest of the business so that the business doesn't get sued by that other person who was affected by what you did? And so, that's where we create this penetration test report, which is not loaded right now, interestingly enough. But we create this penetration test report because that's proof and evidence of what kind of testing ran on your system with details so that they can be reviewed by an auditor and now give you a certification of compliance. And so that's when we go into the subject, into the topic of compliance. So compliance means that certain groups of people created a structure for testing an organization's security framework to see if they are pursuing cybersecurity in the right way. And not only cybersecurity, but also physical security. And so there are certain frameworks out there, like for example, SOC 2 compliance. It's very prevalent here in the US. And then in Europe, ISO 27001. So these are the ones that you'd hear the most of, but obviously you have GDPR compliance and you have CCPA now in California, et cetera, et cetera. So again, these are all frameworks that provide with like a list of items that you need to follow to be in the right position to perform business in a specific category. So this is kind of boring and it's a kind of a dry subject, but the thing here is that without everything that we saw before, all these cybersecurity bases, all this testing, all this security configuration, now compliance is really irrelevant. There's no way you're going to be compliant, and then that means you're doing business over a basis that is so flaky that anytime you're going to get into a lawsuit. So now that's becoming very relevant because bigger companies are realizing, first, they don't want to do all this work by themselves, right? So now they start, that's why you hear the word SaaS all the time, right? Software as a service. So what's happening there? Oh, like American Airlines doesn't want to take care of their culture, of their team culture. And so they hire a different company that has a software that uses machine learning, et cetera, to create team culture. Great. But is that other company that they are hiring secure? Are they following best practices? And that's where these compliance frameworks become so relevant, because now there's a way to systematically say, are all these businesses that I'm doing business with also following best practices? And that's the whole idea related to compliance. Any questions or thoughts so far? Yes.
Can I ask what like a typical example of a vulnerability that a company might be?
The typical vulnerability that
a company might have.
That a company may have.
Yeah.
That's great. So a typical example of a vulnerability that a company may have. So the most typical and the worst one is having servers that are open to the internet or ports that are open to certain servers that can allow access to a hacker to their network. So a very, very the easiest way to hack into a system is, let's say, if the system is exposed using SSH online. SSH is a communication protocol that allows you to log into a Linux machine, etc. If a computer is exposed using SSH, now you can use a password cracker, a password system that it's going to allow try passwords until it gets in. And this is more typical than not. You would be surprised. So literally, like I've seen it in big corporations. They just leave, oh, it's just that Walmart wants to send us data and they want to send it over SSH. And, they wouldn't change their mind. It's impossible to change their mind. And you know, the least you can do is you can say, okay, Walmart, I'm gonna give you access, but just to one specific IP address so that I can identify you. And that's a more or less, you know, like reasonable security measure that you can take. But if you're saying I open SSH to the world just because Walmart wants to send me data over SSH and I want to please them because I want to do business with them, that's not good enough, you know? So that's one thing, but then you'll see databases that are not encrypted or that are open also or have open access to the internet. Now you have all these services that are called simple storage services, like Amazon S3, the same thing for Azure, etc. You have employees that upload files in there and they become publicly available because they are not really looking at what they are doing. And these are just some of them. But now let's go into into now hacking into your people in the organization, which happens. So we had a person that we know back in Venezuela that they were running SAP for the longest time. They invested hundreds of thousands of dollars in this system. And a hacker was able to manipulate an employee inside the network to run an application, right? So this was social engineering. So the employee ran a software, you know, completely accidental. He didn't even realize the hacker gained access to it. Now the hacker encrypted the database, okay, so that they couldn't get access to it anymore. Not only that, the hacker got access to the backups of the database, encrypted the backups of the database, and then asked for $100,000 ransom, right? So now social engineering, someone can go in and just run some software within your application. So that's why, as part of compliance, we're going to have training for the employees to make sure that they follow best practices, that they don't just open any emails that come in, et cetera, et cetera. So these are some of the things, some of the scenarios. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's more, I mean, it's really, you know, like we were talking to, we ran a scan on a prospect a couple of weeks back. And, you know, in my opinion, like when we ran this first scan and we prioritized it automatically using AI and all that, you know, like I saw, oh my God, okay, great. They have like failures that are a little bit above, you know, like our normal customers because they are a little bit more advanced in terms of cybersecurity. But still, all of the sudden we found within the scan that they had a server completely open to the internet. And the CTO saw it and he's like, oh my God, why is that even there? That's not great. Makes sense? So we're you know, like the thing here is that like it's not about putting blame on people. Cybersecurity is not about that. Like, and this is important for you guys. Like if you go out there, like sometimes you might be seen as the enemy just because you know there's something wrong. And so how we approach that topic and how do we work with business counterparts to tell them, hey, this is a priority, but I'm not blaming anyone. I'm not trying to hurt the CTO or your CIO. I'm just trying to be a partner in this so that we create a better place for everybody. That's very important in terms of practical application. Make sense? Yes.
How is it possible to check if a business is compliant, like ISO or
SOC 2? Great. Yeah. So a couple of things happen. There are a couple of different ways in which that's done. Obviously, companies go through that certification process, and once they go through it, they will have a certificate. For SOC 2 Type 2, for SOC 2 compliance, there are two types. There's Type 1 and Type 2. And this is also very interesting. So Type 1 means a point in time. It means I run all of the security tests, all of the security framework, and as of today, April 11th, today, we are compliant. But tomorrow, someone may launch a server in my network and all of a sudden it's open to the internet. I'm not compliant anymore. right? So that's why they created SOC 2 Type 2. So Type 2 means you're monitoring all controls for at least a period of 6 months to a year to prove that you were able to obtain compliance and sustain it. And that's very important. So for that, we use certain partners that have created software that monitor on a daily basis the compliance aspects. They map all these security scans that we run. They map the results from the security scans to the compliance framework, which again is just a checklist of I did this, I set up key cards, authentication, I checked, I did an access review on all my employees, et cetera, So they match all of that together and they have a checklist that it's live in a system and that ensures that all those items are taken care of. Make sense? So
Is there a public database that we can, if we want, like, if we care about this security issue that we can check?
yeah,
For instance, if I want to use some kind of, I don't know, cloud-based system that from a company which offers a cheap rate, but I've never heard of.
that's a good point.
And then I say, okay,
There's not really a public database of SOC compliant companies. Most, the regular way to get that is to request a certificate. So if a big business, Shell Oil wants to do, you want to sell them, they're going to come to you and tell you, hey, can you provide with your latest SOC 2 Type 2 certificate? That's how it works. So it's still pretty, like you say, it would be interesting if at some point in time you could go and say, hey, is Securely SOC 2 Type 2 or not? Or what are they, right? Yeah. So, but I think it's going to go that route for sure. Any other questions? So, you know, like every other business, right? I would say there has to be someone that wants to sell it. You know, really, when I started this, I started just to help someone at a WeWork where I was working. They had an issue. They had just received a penetration test, and they didn't know what to do with it. They didn't know how to fix it, how to get approved. And so at that point in time, I started helping them. And then Orit, who's been my wife and partner since forever, came to me and told me, hey, listen, we should definitely do something with this and turn it into a product. And you know, honestly, I'm a programmer. I would just want to be programming all of the time. But she really wanted to make something out of this. She saw the value. And that's how we started working on it. Why do I tell you about this? I mean, you know, like I have no need to patronize her. I live with her. She beats me up all the time when she wants. Really, the point here is I want to inspire you guys. I want you to know you guys can also create. Like if it wasn't for her pushing for this had not been created. And I've been so happy when I see that we can help our customers, when I see a smile in their face, when I see they are gaining something out of what we are doing. You guys that are here, you have the power to innovate. You have the power to create. Doesn't matter your background. You know, like I cannot explain. I mean, we from Venezuela, like the resources we had. I mean, when I first came here and I saw how amazing this country is, how many resources, like, you know, like the biggest server I had seen in Venezuela was probably this size, you know? And when I came here and I started working at a public corporation in New York, they gave me like 5 servers like this size. Hey, go and set all that up. And I'm like, oh my God, I've never seen machines this big, you know? But so we do have the power to innovate. You guys are here, you're learning. My advice is always keep your mind open, because even if you are within a big organization and you are innovating in there, the pleasure is amazing. Like how you feel great that you're bringing solutions to the table. So I really commend her for pushing us to make this happen, because without her, I wouldn't have done it, that's for sure. All right, I wanted to just give you a couple recommended resources. Like these are very practical resources that you guys can leverage to get some basic certification that makes you guys immediately marketable out there. In terms of like, let's say, Amazon Web Services certification or any of the clouds. So these guys at A Cloud Guru, they have practical training online that you can use that's very specific to getting certified for clouds. And so whether that's something that you guys maybe can promote in here so that everybody does it as a group or whatever, I think it's a great resource. And then if you guys don't have any cloud knowledge, or for those of you that don't have any cloud knowledge or certification, like the Cloud Practitioner Foundational certification is a great starting point. It gives you like a quick perspective of how does the AWS cloud works and how to, what you can get an idea of what are the areas in there that might be of interest to you.
They charge for these services?
So A Cloud Guru charges for the service. It's pretty inexpensive. I don't remember now if it's like $20, $30 per month. It's
Okay.
very, very inexpensive. For the Cloud Practitioner, there's actually like a completely free course that Amazon gives you, and you can get certified from home or from here. You can sit at a desk and they do online proctoring of the exam. And now you can say, hey, I'm certified cloud practitioner. It's a good thing to have in your resume, I think. Like if we look at practical knowledge, stuff that you can use to leverage, even if, like let's say we were talking about internships, right?
Yeah.
Like it makes the candidates way more valuable if they have knowledge, right? If they have some basic knowledge of the cloud, and if they have like a little bit of a certification, I think it always adds up. Now, there's a bunch of beautiful certification paths in AWS, like Solutions Architect, I would highly recommend it. There's a security specialty certification out there, but the same applies to all clouds. I'm 100% believer on being platform agnostic. So it doesn't matter which cloud, like really any cloud is or any knowledge is gonna help the other one. And to that point, and not to advertise AWS, but I think that's what they did really good. They created a solid platform for best practices in engineering. Forget about the rest. Forget about brand, Amazon. To be honest with you, before I had to ever work with AWS Cloud, the fact that it was Amazon, like it kind of pissed me off because I was like, oh my God, they are eating the world. Like they have all these, they are like the one and only. But I then realized why they were so successful, and it's they created best practices for engineering. So I really commend them for doing that.
Yeah. I mean, the fact that they made so much of it free is also pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Many of them charge a fortune for these certifications.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. That's good to let the students know.
Of course.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, that's the end of my presentation. If you guys have any additional questions, thank you.
In terms of AI background or in data science, what would you recommend for somebody interested in going into cybersecurity?
So from my perspective is now, how do we apply all these different security scanners will again throw you 3,000 results, right? How do we start applying AI to make it better, easier? One of the biggest challenges with fixing these issues, we were talking before, right? What's a typical vulnerability? So now let's say Sony Pictures has SSH open, right? And you say, oh, this is a vulnerability. It's a very clear, very easy vulnerability. Let's fix it right away. And we go and using machine learning,
Okay,
we close it automatically. And then Walmart is trying to send us data and they are like, hey, data's not going through. Then the whole business division is like, we haven't received anything from Walmart today. What's going on? Did they not sell anything? And, so we have to understand, like there are two sides to everything here. So how do we make it so that all of that comes together? I think that's the future of it. We're talking now, these systems and some companies have gotten there, where let's say they know what the vulnerability is, they address it and they test it. They create a whole scenario. Like now you're creating machines that are testing, replicating the whole environment. And then once the whole test is created, then they roll it out. Things like this, right? That's where cybersecurity connected to machine learning will go. And really understanding the severity of the issues that are out there, it's important too.
they're really intimately linked. Yeah, you can't really, is AI and machine learning the major tool, so to speak, to really work with cyber systems and vulnerabilities and all
I
that?
would say so, yeah. In the future, I would say like that should be the biggest focus. Like, how do we leverage it? How do we find the solutions that are most practical? Because the challenge is when we go into like just science without the practicality, and find those solutions that are most practical to implement them into real business problems.
So from a startup business, and you mentioned, startups are always interesting. So you got assistance from our tech runway, our research park, maybe SBIR. Can you share a little bit about how somebody in starting up a company can get those kinds of supports?
Of course, yeah. So that's a great point. So when we started with this, again, we started just out of helping somebody. I think the most important thing is test if there's really a problem that can scale. That's the biggest first thing, because sometimes we engineers, we find problems. Oh yeah, this is a big problem. Let's solve it. Let's create a solution. But we don't know if it's going to scale. You don't know if it's going to be for 100 customers per year, a business that's just going to grow to that point, and that's going to be there forever. There's no more growth than that. Or if it's going to go to 500, 3,000, 7,000 customers per year. Understanding the scale of what you're creating is the first step. Why? Because with that, you can decide whether this is really something that needs funding that can go to the next level. And so for us, really the first year or so was just testing scale. Like, can we scale this? Who's going to use it? How much can it go? How much really can it help? And in the beginning, a lot of this stuff that you saw in the platform, we did it completely manual, completely. Excel documents, everything was completely manual. We would run the scans manually. I didn't get a chance to show you more. I don't know do I have more time or not?
Yeah.
But maybe another time we can go deeper into what we created. Sorry. Everything that we do now, we launch all the infrastructure that we use for the security testing as code. So it's code that excuse me, what's your name? Veronica. Veronica wants to sign up for a service. She signs up and we launch infrastructure just for her, like on the fly. Like that, we used to have to do that manually. Like, okay, let's create a server to run this specific test for her, this other test. Now that just launches automatically, starts testing you, creates a schedule to run your next test, and now starts aggregating the data and showing it to you the way we saw before, right? So these are all the solutions. Like, we're talking about scale. How do we know we can get there, right? Yes.
Here's a question for
will interest our students. So how much did your background in cryptology help you in this kind of career?
I think tremendously, right? So your background in cryptology is giving you more than just the understanding of encrypting data and all of that. It's creating a mindset for security, in my opinion, but that's my opinion, right? So for me, you know, like I started thinking about, okay, what are some practical solutions that I can create for security? And eventually, obviously, different paths or different opportunities come your way. You know, like I worked for a company that created a passwordless authentication system. As I mentioned before, I also created a patent for using public key infrastructure to authentication, an authentication protocol using that. So for me, it's an inspiration to apply that mindset of cybersecurity into many other solutions that you will find along your professional path.
In a general sense, what do you think businesses and industries value most when looking at people from like an academic setting?
Okay, I think so. Two things. They want to see practical experience with something, and that's why I always suggest, you know, and I've had this in the past where like some students of MBAs have come and asked me, you know, like, what do I do? I came out of this MBA and I have this opportunity with this big company, but, you know, like, and sometimes things don't pan out and they freeze, you know, like, don't freeze. Look for practical experience, even if it's not great to start with. Yeah, always shoot for the moon. If you can go get an internship with Coca-Cola or with Palo Alto Technologies, which is a big cybersecurity company, go do it. But if that doesn't pan out, don't wait, don't freeze, do something else, find a smaller company, get some practical experience. Immediately get on a certification path, you know, and get a real experience, because that's what becomes more valuable really for any company out there. They want to see that you have done something in the real world. You know, it's not just knowledge. And to that point, I think also what matters is, can you add value to an organization without needing stuff from someone else? Here in the university, in the college, where we rely on teachers, and so many times, you know, like I always said, you know, like I'm so grateful for my teachers because they are giving you their time, you know, like their knowledge. But when you go out there, you can't just sit in a desk and ask, okay, give me knowledge on how to do all this stuff. And you can, really, you can, but you're not going to be the most valuable player then. If you want to be the most valuable player, you got to go into a company and then use what you learned here to be independent in an organization and create by yourself and learn by yourself whatever's out there. And, you know, like, I think that some of the most valuable experiences that I had is like I said, I literally, that scenario that I told you when I got to New York to one of the companies that hired me, they just put a bunch of servers there and they told me, okay, configure all this stuff, make it run. And I'm telling you, like that was crazy that they gave me that task. It was an impossible task, but I had to research it. I spent weekends going to work by myself, nights, until I figured it out, because there was nobody else to teach me. And there wasn't even like OpenAI, there was nothing. There wasn't this was a product that wasn't even documented. It was the worst mission ever, but it did help me learn that if I'm independent and I can create the solution by myself, I can add value. I can add a lot of value.
That's a really important point, that they come with a lot of knowledge, but it has to be added value to the company.
Sorry.
Yeah, excellent point, yeah.
Okay, I think there may be a question in the chat.
So,
It's a thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Mila, too. Thank you guys really for your time and for the opportunity to participate. And I hope to see you soon.
Thank you.
Yeah. Got the read over here.
I made it.